back, Senator Bernie Sanders issued a scathing statement after the vice president's loss in what he called a disastrous campaign, saying, quote, "It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that the working class has abandoned them."
The working people of this country are extremely angry. They have a right to be angry. In the richest country in the history of the world, today, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, while 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and millions of families worry that their kids are actually going to have a lower standard of living than they do. You got the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%. We're the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all of our people. 25% of our seniors are trying to live on $15,000 a year or less. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. And the gap between the people on top and everybody else is getting wider and wider. And then, Kristen, on top of all of that, we got a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. So if you're an average worker out there, you're saying, hey, I'm working longer and longer hours, going nowhere in a hurry, worried about my kids, and yet the people on top have never had it so good. Where is the Democratic Party? Are they prepared to stand up to these powerful corporate interests, raise the minimum wage, fight for health care for all people, make sure that all of our kids get the quality education that they need, expand Social Security? Are they prepared to do those things? That's the issue that we have to address.
Some Democrats are saying it's not just economic issues, it's cultural issues as well. Here's what Democratic strategist James Carville had to say. Take a look.
What killed the Democrats and what killed Biden was a sense of disorder. And part of the sense of disorder was the unfortunate events of what I would refer to as the woke era.
The Democratic Party must continue to stand up against all forms of bigotry. And Democrats should hold their head high in saying, we led the fight for women's rights and to protect the woman's constitutional right for abortion. We led the fight for civil rights, for gay rights. That is something we should be proud of. But it's not either or, Kristen. This is the problem. You can do both. You could say that I'm for raising the minimum wage to a living wage, guarantee health care for all people, expanding Social Security. And by the way, I also support a woman's right to control her own body, etc. It's not either or, it's going forward in both directions. Here is the bottom line, and it has to be dealt with. You got an economy today doing phenomenally well for the people on top. It is not working for the working class, all right? How do we address those issues? And in the richest country on the history of the world, create an economy that works for all. That is the issue. The Democrats need an explanation, and that explanation is corporate greed and the power of the billionaire class. I know that's uncomfortable for people in the Democratic Party, some people, but that is the issue we have to address.
If the United States is a leading terrorist state, if, as you say, Britain is another example of a terrorist state, how do you distinguish between that kind of what you describe as terrorism and what they are saying, Osama bin Laden, who's a terrorist? Make the distinction.
That's very simple. If they do it, it's terrorism. If we do it, it's counterterrorism. That's a historical universal. You go back to Nazi propaganda, see, most extreme mass murderers ever. If you look at Nazi propaganda, it's exactly what they said. They said they are defending the populations and the legitimate governments of Europe.
Let's talk about in the Middle East, for example, where Sharon says, we are experiencing terrorist bombings, and therefore we have to have a big operation in the West Bank and root out terrorism. And people say, hey, you're violating human rights, and the Israelis say, there's no equivalency between suicide bombings and protecting our security.
This is the 35th year of a harsh, brutal, and vicious occupation, supported unilaterally by the United States, constant terror and atrocities. Suppose Palestinians say, well, we're under terrorist attack for 35 years, therefore we have a right to carry out suicide bombings.
Which is what they say.
Do you accept this? Does anybody accept it?
Nobody accepts
All
it.
right, then how come everyone accepts the Israeli claim to be doing it, which is a much weaker claim? Because after all, there's no symmetry in this situation. They are the military occupiers. Those who defend suicide bombing, and there are very few, don't have a leg to stand on. Those who defend the Israeli atrocities, including the U.S. government, most intellectual opinion, a good bit of the West generally, yeah, they don't have a leg to stand on either, and they have a much weaker position.
You asked us after September 11, one of your points is we ought to look in the mirror, we being America or the West. We ought to look in the mirror at our own. Was that a way of saying, look, people like bin Laden are angry at us for good reason?
No,
in other words, is there a way to justify...
That's not what I was saying. The statement of mine that you just quoted is a very conservative statement. In fact, it was articulated by George Bush's favorite philosopher, Jesus Christ, who pointed out, famously, defined the notion hypocrite. A hypocrite is a person who focuses on the other fellow's crimes and refuses to look at his own.
I know that the U.S. has committed atrocities. However, they did oust a more brutal regime, the Taliban. There wasn't even a war aim. There wasn't even a war aim. Wasn't even a war aim. But is that a moral thing to do? They did get rid of a brutal regime. There was celebration in Canada. Now,
good, fine. Let them bomb Israel and get rid of the brutal regime there. What honest people are saying is that we should pay attention to our own crimes and stop committing them. This would be true even if we were killing one person, okay? And it's even more true when we're killing people.
Do we need a constabulary, a force, a central force? In this case, it's America because it's the superpower, to sometimes use unjust means in the service of just causes.
What are the just causes? What was the just cause in, for example, slaughtering Kurds in southeastern Turkey? What was the just cause? What was the just cause in supporting Suharto when he killed a couple 100,000 landless peasants in Indonesia, went on to become one of the biggest torturers in the world, and then slaughtered a third of the population of East Timor? What was the just cause? What was the just cause when we invaded South Vietnam 40 years ago, ending up killing millions of people, leaving the country devastated, they're still dying from chemical warfare? What was the just cause? The just cause for people like Kaplan is, we did it. Therefore, it's a just cause. You can read that in the Nazi archives, too. As long as people, ordinary people, are able to free themselves from the doctrinal controls imposed on them by their self-appointed betters and mentors, as long as they're able to do this, they'll continue to be able to struggle for peace and justice and freedom and limitations on violence and constraints on power, as they've been doing for hundreds of years, and I don't see any end to that. Where it'll end up in the long run, I can tell you where I'd like it to, but I wouldn't even dream about that. The immediate problem is to free ourselves from the shackles imposed very consciously by the kind of people you're talking about, who don't want the facts to be known, and for very good reasons, because if people know the facts, they're not going to tolerate them.
The place I'm heading to today is by far the most difficult place I have ever landed an airplane, ever. It's called Aibai. It's actually on the side of a mountain. It's got about an 80-foot cliff at the end, on actually both ends. One going up, one going down, and it's located, I think, at like 6,200 feet. So there's definitely some elements that make this place very difficult. One of those being the wind. It's kind of in a bowl, so it swirls around. So at the bottom of the runway, the wind shows one way. At the top of the runway, it's completely opposite most times. And because it's situated at 6,200 feet, your ground speed is much faster. It's only a 12-minute flight out there, so I'm at my almost max gross weight. So my approach speed is going to be the fastest, like 74 knots. But because my touchdown zone is like a 9 to 10% slope, I have to add 3 to 4 knots on top of my approach speed to be able to basically match the slope before I flare. Otherwise, you just pancake into the ground. So I'm waiting on the weather right now. It's just on the other side of these mountains right over here, 12 minutes away. So when I get the okay to go, we're out of here on a 12-minute flight. It has finally cleared up at Aibai. It's now 10:30 in the morning, so let's go. Right, there is the field. Winds are still really calm, but now they're coming from this direction. Go up and around this hill. Full flaps, checklist is complete, turning final. A little bit slippery. Always exciting, even for me, after how many times I've been in here. Orsby 659 or 8, November Tango Echo, on the ground, I-by cancel SAR.
November Tango Echo, high-by haulage terminated.
Yeah. November Tango Echo. All right, he's saying it's a little bit soft in here, so I'm just going to turn around right here, if I can. All right, well, if you enjoyed that, give it a thumbs up. Go check out some other videos. See if I can link a video to some on-the-ground content that I post on my Patreon page, and I'll make it free for you guys. You guys go see kind of the content you can expect on Patreon. So, thank you guys for watching that very short little flight, and I hope to see you guys on another flight.
Tractor Supply is caught up in a political whirlwind. First, some conservatives calling for a boycott over the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And now some organizations on the other end of the political spectrum are threatening a boycott since the company announced a reversal on its DEI position. Here's how the debacle all started.
It is time to expose Tractor Supply. They're so committed to DEI that they release yearly reports on how many more minorities they're hiring that year. Tractor Supply is doing such a good job of being woke that the Human Rights Campaign has given them an A grade. But to demand change and let them know that you are going to be leaving as a customer, they're going to understand very quickly who their customers are and gonna make the changes necessary.
The viral video goes on for about 8 minutes, posted by Robbie Starbuck, a conservative video maker in Tennessee, listing some of Tractor Supply's DEI efforts and climate change advocacy. The video was posted June 6th. Calls for a boycott followed. Tractor Supply's stock dipped 5%. Those calls led to the CEO issuing this letter last week. We have heard from customers that we have disappointed them. We have taken this feedback to heart. Going forward, we will ensure our activities and giving tie directly to our business. According to the letter from the CEO, Tractor Supply will get rid of DEI roles and retire DEI goals while still ensuring a respectful workplace. It will end its carbon emission goals and focus on land and water conservation efforts instead. Tractor Supply will also stop sponsoring non-business related activities such as pride festivals and political campaigns. This move was received well by the conservatives who started the boycott campaign, but ignited a fire amongst many liberals. The National Black Farmers Association president is now demanding the CEO to step down and considering a boycott of their own if Tractor Supply doesn't reverse course on its DEI reversal. Quote, "I was appalled by the decision. I see this as rolling back the clock with race relations because the country is so divided on race, especially in rural America. Black farmers are going to start fighting back, and that's what we're doing." An animal sanctuary in New York has already initiated their own boycott, posting on X, each year Tractor Supply makes more than $65K yearly off this account. Today we met with our branch manager. We explained that we cannot support Tractor Supply any longer. You have lost our business and every shred of respect we might have had. Starbucks, who initiated the controversy, called out this latest wave of boycott calls for the opposite reason he had called for one, saying, quote, making your business politically neutral is only controversial to people who demand that companies cater to their politics. The media is desperate to frame our Tractor Supply win as anything but what it actually was, a return to normalcy where they're just a farm supply store. Tractor Supply has not further commented on the latest calls for a boycott. I'm Kara Rucker, a reporter for Straight Arrow News.
I said I was on the wrong side. I said, how could this be a good boy? I'm on the wrong side. I did everything right. And it was all wrong. The policies of the United States of America are illegal in both international and domestic law.
Brian and I had made this commitment. Remove us or run over.
The killing must stop, and I have to do everything in my power to stop it.
He was obviously ready to do whatever needed to be done.
You have the right not to be killed. Murder is a crime.
Between 1950 and 2000, the U.S. government has overthrown 60 democratically elected governments, dropped bombs on over 30 nations, and attempted assassinations of over 60 foreign leaders. Millions died in these undeclared wars.
We're going to have drone aircraft carriers that are going to release countless numbers of smaller drones.
Move it back off the military installation. Move it back.
We're all connected, and how can I be possibly participating in killing other people I did not know?
We have to get the story told, how important it is that we not let the government run our lives.
To throw a train at human bodies that were sitting on a track is insane.
You have to be willing to risk life, limb in prison. You have to be willing to risk the consequences, because then you're free.
Know your rights.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Protests over the U.S. arming Israel are continuing. On Monday morning, more than 200 Jewish activists and their allies were arrested as they blocked entrances to the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. The protesters were calling for an Israeli arms embargo, an end to war profiteering by companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. The protest was organized by Jewish Voice for Peace, which said the action was the largest act of civil disobedience in history outside the New York Stock Exchange. Participants in the protests included descendants of Holocaust survivors, as well as Emmy Award-winning comedian Eric Andre, Academy Award-winning filmmaker Laura Poitras, the acclaimed artist Nan Golden, the Oscar-nominated actress Deborah Winger, and the artist Molly Crabapple. Police forcibly removed many of the peaceful protesters, including our next guest, Elena Stein. She's director of organizing and strategy for Jewish Voice for Peace. She was arrested, held for 8 hours. Welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us, Elena. There's a very dramatic picture of you being taken out, held, carried by police on your back. You're wearing the T-shirt you're wearing right now, Stop Arming Israel. Explain what this action was all about.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Amy and Juan. I've been watching Democracy Now! Every morning for about 15 years, so appreciate everything you all do. Yesterday, 500 Jewish New Yorkers and friends shut down business as usual at the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street, demanding, the epicenter of global capital, demanding that the U.S. stop arming Israel and stop profiting from genocide. And, as we arrived in the morning, we were learning the news that just that night, Israel had bombed the Al-Aqsa hospital and had set at least 30 tents ablaze, full of people who had already been displaced, who still had IVs in their arms from being at the hospital, burning people alive. And this comes after days and days of massacring whole families in the Jabalia refugee camp as part of the larger strategy to block off, to starve, to essentially complete the ethnic cleansing of northern Gaza, where 400,000 people are. This is being called a genocide within a genocide. People are posting their final goodbyes. So we are filled with horror beyond words, and are attempting just to embody just an ounce of that refusal in our actions. And of course, what's so important for all of us here in the U.S. to understand is that this is being done with U.S. bombs. Those bombs that are massacring family after family in this war of extermination. Because make no mistake, that is the goal, extermination. It is being done with U.S. bombs, with U.S. weapons, and with U.S. cover, with shielding Israel from accountability at any international institution. Now, the Biden administration wants you to believe that the reason the U.S. is arming and funding and covering the Israeli government like this is for the sake of Jewish safety, right? This is the moral cover that they use. This is the justification used to cloak the entire enterprise. And so we are there to say we reject this myth, this sick myth, with every fiber of our beings. We refuse to let our histories, our identities, our traditions be used to torture, to starve, to massacre, to erase Palestinians. And we are there to say the true interests of the Biden administration, the true interests of the U.S. government are this: its own imperial interests and its own financial interests. And so we are there to say to the U.S., stop arming Israel, stop profiting from genocide.
рождає! Славімо його!
you spend enough time around homeless people, you begin to see the world through their eyes.
Hey, we got to talk about the trash.
Nobody in this world owes you a freaking thing.
Meth came into the picture, and it screwed up the homeless world because now everybody's up walking around at midnight and looking like zombies.
This all started one day in October when the coffee shop I usually go to ran out of parking spaces. I found a spot by the train tracks with a path leading into the forest, and I followed it. As I got to the tracks, I began to hear music, and I followed that too. It led me somewhere unexpected, a camp of homeless people jamming in a tent. That's when I met Bruce and everyone else at the Hobo Jam Studios. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I crossed over those tracks, I crossed over into the homeless world.
Yeah.
Why do people choose to camp in like downtown or like under the bridge or something?
I don't know, because they're stupid. That's what I think, because I like to hide. Out of sight, out of mind. You know, if you're out in their view, they're going to see you.
And fuck with you, yeah.
Yeah, and they give you a bad time. I mean, I'm only homeless because COVID. I've been out here for 3 years. I've adapted quite well, but I had another boss that I could work for, but he was the only one that gave me a shot, and he was an alcoholic bad. One of those that would get up in the morning drinking vodka thinking, oh, it's water, you know. He almost got me killed twice coming home from work riding with him. Said, I can't do this no more. I'd rather be out on the streets. Hence, I came out on the street.
Camps like this are only held together as tightly as the bonds between the people living in them. And when those relationships are unstable, chaos erupts.
Across the railroad, there was a place where Clyde normally...
Yeah, Clyde's not here no more.
Yeah,
because
he got ran out. He got ran out. He was screaming and hollering all the time. Man,
and he was stealing. He was stealing from places right here around, and that's something we don't condone.
Over the course of a few months, I would check in on Bruce and his camp regularly, getting to know him and his family. I decided that if I was going to continue filming, I had to capture what life was like from their perspective, if only for one night.
All right, just got my car packed. Going to be spending a night in the woods with the people I met there, Bruce and his camp. I brought a tent, a blanket, my camera equipment, my phone. I'm going to be live streaming.
I entered camp around 6 p.m. From there, I began a live stream, which ran for the duration of my stay.
All right, so got my tent set up here just outside their camp. This is where people are living, and I'm just a guest, so I'm trying to keep things a little minimal here, but I will be documenting my stay.
Aside from the music, things were fairly quiet around camp. That was until we heard the screams in the dark.
Enough! What's going on?
I don't know.
It came from a nearby camp, and it stopped as quickly as it started. Still, it did startle me a bit. When you're out here, hidden from the rest of society, arguments can quickly escalate out of control, creating problems that spill into other camps. Sometimes I wonder how the homeless live out here for as long as they do. For Carrie, I think what keeps her going is her ability to see the light in dark situations. That night, it was cold, but Carrie's fire kept me warm. After talking with her, I got back to my tent and waited with anticipation for the sun to finally rise again.
I appreciate them letting me stay here in their campground area, so I'm going to be heading out now. It's been a wild ride, but I think I've learned a few things. I think I've learned that it's important to have people that care about you, because when no one else is around and all these systems we've built in the city don't work anymore, when they break down, that's all that's going to be left. And some of these people have learned that a lot sooner than the rest of us.
I was only out there for 14 hours, and I was already ready to go back home. But for them, there was no home to return to. Though my time with them was short, staying with the forest dwellers was a humbling experience that made me more grateful for what I have.
Good evening. The Benedictine Sisters of Erie are tonight defending themselves from unfounded claims after a Pennsylvania-based GOP door-knocking group with nearly 60,000 followers on X accused the sisters of voter fraud.
The post has garnered national attention and has already been viewed nearly 3 million times. The accusers, claiming the 53 registered voters at the address of the monastery don't actually live there. Matt Mathias breaks down the situation for your local election headquarters. Matt.
Yeah, that's right, Sean and Jen. The Benedictine Sisters describe this accusation as a new low in what's been an intense election cycle filled with misinformation. A Pennsylvania-based GOP door-knocking initiative has accused the Benedictine Sisters of Erie of voter fraud, claiming that of the 53 voters registered to the monastery's address, none live there. This comes after one of the group's representatives supposedly visited the monastery to ask about an unreturned mail-in ballot. The leader of the group posted this on X, and since it was posted Tuesday, it's accumulated nearly 3 million views and sparked outrage from the sisters here in Erie.
It was very disturbing to think that someone would fabricate a story of coming here and a sister saying no one lives here. That is beyond belief.
Beyond claiming no one lives at the monastery, founder of the Pennsylvania Chase, Cliff Maloney, posted the names of the sisters, their ages, and their affiliations.
As a community, we work, we pray, we're living together, we believe in peace and justice. To see this blatant misinformation using our names, it just was outrageous.
We're told 55 sisters live at the monastery right now. Each of them have their own separate bedrooms, a common dining room, community rooms, and come together in the chapel to pray together 3 times a day. According to experts, misinformation has run wild in this election.
It's mystifying to me that people are so passive in how they get their news in a democracy. A democracy depends upon an informed citizenry, and we are drowning in bad information.
Bloodsworth calls this the attention economy.
All they want to do is get clicks and make as much money and stir the pot and apparently lie about nuns.
Maloney had this to say on X after being fact-checked by the Benedictine Sisters, who are warning others to be careful of what you read online.
People are lying right and left on social media, and there are so many people that just read it and believe it. So we want to alert the public that you can't believe everything you read. You have to critically look at it and do your homework. This particular man who posted it obviously did not verify or do his homework.
And as we previously stated, this situation has gotten national attention. CNN News was on site today talking to the sisters, and they're hoping this will help set the record straight. Sean.
Matt Mathias reporting tonight. Thank you, Matt.
The iconic Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris will be reopening 5 years after a devastating fire closed the 860-year-old Gothic cathedral. Take a look at these pictures. Now, thanks to the work of hundreds of artisans and billions of euros in donations from around the world, Notre Dame is ready to shine again. Joining us now from Paris is Laura Haim, foreign correspondent for French News USA and former spokesperson for Emmanuel Macron's presidential campaign. It's always a pleasure to see you, Laura. Thank you for your time. It took just 5 years to rebuild Notre Dame. How does it feel to have it back?
It's not called anymore Notre Dame de Paris, it's called Notre Dame of France, because here in France, people were so moved, Jose, by what's happening with Notre Dame. You know, it was a work of love, a love to restore the beautiful church. It took 5 years and a half, more than 2,000 French people were involved, people who used to work like in the 13th century, who used the same method, but who also wanted to use the new technology. So it was a mix of tradition and modernity to make sure that the cathedral will be open in time. The restoration are stunning, and there's a lot of deep pride here in the French society for this Notre Dame of Paris.
Yes, and I mean, it is going to be some celebration with so many theological underpinnings this weekend. What's it going to be like?
It's going to be stunning because you're going to have a lot of deep feelings. All the French people want to be there. On Saturday, you're going to have the opening ceremony with a lot of head of the states who are going to be there. You know that President-elect Trump is going to be there. This is a big story in politics. We expect also, and that's a news I can give you, that President Zelensky will be there from Ukraine. So you have the restoration of Notre Dame, you have the beauty of Notre Dame, which is going to be celebrated, but you also, behind the scene of the church, you're going to have a kind of international summit with President Macron, with a lot of presidents from Africa, with a lot of president and prime minister from Europe, and with President-elect Trump, who is coming, and also President Zelensky. It just has been confirmed by the Elysee a few minutes ago. So there are a lot of expectations. I just want to tell you, Jose, that, you know, we're living in a time of uncertainty in Europe. We are very anxious about what's going to happen, and the celebration of Notre Dame is, for all of us in France, a moment of peace.